Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's live. That song was just like getting me in the mood, getting me all hyped. Yeah, sorry for the delay. I honestly just kind of like messed up on the back end, but we are here. We are going, we are moving. So, if you have any questions, make sure you throw them in the YouTube live chat or the live chat on Twitter live streams. It's kind of like a new feature. It's pretty cool. Keep it farmer friendly. But yeah, we're going to be going through a lot more chapter 2 stuff today. So it's very exciting. If you're in game, make sure you're in the theater, getting some passive energy with that popcorn flying everywhere. And then you can also watch us live in game if you click on the microphone on stage. Yeah, let's bring up Luke.
Hey everybody, excited to be here today. So today what I want to go over is obviously we have some chapter 2 stuff that we show you guys today too. I want to give you guys kind of a rundown on where we're at, the things we're planning, and then I kind of want to give you guys like another iteration or another like talk about like what the long-term vision of Pixels is. So we'll just dive into that really quickly, and then we'll show you guys some of the like gameplay when it comes to land ownership for chapter 2. So yeah, Pixels, it's been really fun the last couple of months, and as we've started to grow, we've also gotten the chance to shape our vision to something a bit more clear too. And right now, this is an interesting phase because we're not really releasing as much as we typically do, right? Like if you have been following Pixels for a long time, we have been kind of known for actually doing crazy fast live ops, and we built really great tech and tooling to do that. Now we're actually in this different stage of company building, and we're really fortunate to be in this spot where what we're trying to do now, last 2 to 3 months since we've launched a token, is we're basically trying to level up every single area of the company. And there's kind of 3 different areas that we're thinking about when we think about what the future of Pixels looks like. So the first is essentially like, what does the current game look like? Like the game that we released, the Pixels game that you guys all know, love, and play. How do we make that game better when it comes to game quality? How do we make it better when it comes to player experience? How do we make it more cyber resistant? How do we just basically improve all of that? So it's interesting because this is maybe a controversial statement. I don't think we're the best quality game in Web3, but we also have one of the only live games in Web3 right now. And we know that we have a long way to go when it comes to game quality. And that's the kind of stuff that we're working on with this current title that we're working on, essentially. Like, how do we make this game make more sense? How do we make it more friendly to people who have never seen Pixels? How do we make it so that you can play the game without watching a player W3 tutorial? And yeah, how do we just make everything a bit more friendly to people who are coming into Web3 for the first time? Or when you guys go to onboard your friends, family, and all this, like, how do you make it so we don't have to have you handhold them so much? So there's a lot of room that we're working on here. And that's kind of what this AMA is going to be focused on when we start to show you the changes with chapter 2, because this is the first step to that. Essentially, what we're trying to build right now is a good base of gameplay so we can expand on it further and make the game more interesting over the next year. The other thing that we're working on is essentially we call it like the token distribution side of things. And that's a lot of what we've been working on in the meantime too, as we're getting out chapter 2 content. This is some crazy stuff. And this is probably, to me, I've been tweeting about this a lot. If you want to follow my Twitter threads and all my thoughts on this kind of stuff, maybe we'll dig into that more next week. But essentially, yeah, second area is how do we actually distribute rewards in a way that changes how user acquisition works inside of gaming? And this second step kind of builds on that third step that we're building on that I'll get to next. But this, to me, is the core technology of Web3 gaming. I kind of talked in the thread the other day And if you want to look at that, maybe we'll pin it or something like that later, because I think there's some interesting stuff to dig into there when you think about what we're actually trying to do here at Pixels and what we think the future of Web3 gaming and like this particular company project looks like. Is why we're building Web3 is we think that it's actually a game changer when it comes to the way that games grow and the way that games actually become, monetizable, all this kind of stuff. If you look at the trajectory or the similar paths of Web2 companies, what you see a lot of the mobile game companies or the free-to-play game companies did was what they did was they released the first game. Their first games typically actually weren't very good, and that's okay, because really what we view this first Pixels game that we're building out is kind of a live experiment with all of this user acquisition technology that we're building out. And this is the real key tech and the real core piece of the work that we're doing here at Pixels. But we need a game to do that. The game that we have to release to you guys has to be fun, engaging, and it has to be, a certain standard of quality that we don't think it's quite at yet, but we're hopefully getting there, right? But then the other piece of this side of things is basically the task board that you guys have been working on, and not just the task board, but all the other pieces that make the rewards inside of the game feel really good and interesting. So really what we're trying to figure out is, like, this is the key piece here. We're trying to figure out what I like to say is, I
We
can't,
both need this reminder occasionally.
oh no, I can't not talk
Too
fast. It's just like
excited.
my mind moves at like a million words per minute. And I think that's a good founder trait. There's some research, people that talk faster, they get more stuff done, right?
There you
Maybe not true.
go.
Yeah, the key thing that we're working on here is how do you actually give rewards to your users directly instead of giving them to advertisers to go and grow your game, essentially? And it's much easier said than done. So it's a multi-stage process, right? Like the first thing that you need to do before you even get to any of that is real user identification. We've been putting a lot of work into that. We've been trying like a bunch of different vendors. We've been building out our own internal tech. We actually have like ML algorithms that we use. We have a team member that's built this out that basically can like look at the data inside of the game, look at how the users behave, and kind of label them as real users or not. This is something that we're still fine tuning, and we're getting more and more pieces of data that help this. We started implementing some stuff with fingerprinting technology that has given us more of a picture of like different hardware IDs, like things like this, so that we can kind of identify real users. But it's actually kind of what I would like to call a wicked problem inside of not just gaming, but consumer technology in general. Like if you go on Twitter, there's tons of bots. If you go on Reddit, there's tons of bots. This is kind of a really hard problem. So we're shifting some of the focus in the long run too on some of the incentive design. How I think we talk about this so much, but I think it's good to reiterate because this is like the core thing that we're building out, and it builds into this other stage of the stuff too. Is basically how do we identify real users? How do we give them rewards? How do we track that the rewards that we're giving actually lead to ecosystem growth? So we could talk about ecosystem growth. Kind of our core metrics and the stuff that we're looking at is pixels spent inside of the game. Basically, if you want to look at and judge the success of Pixels, really what you want to be looking at is the DAU and the DAA numbers are important. They're a piece of the puzzle, but there's a bigger picture here that we're working on. Essentially, like, it's weird to say this with you guys, but you have to think about the business economics too. So if you want to look at our stats, we bring these up a lot. This is like a semi-public dashboard. We share this a good amount. We call our North Star dashboard. We're going to be adding more and more here, but the monetization of the game is actually like a quite important thing to be looking at when you want to judge like how we're doing, where we're at. So, last 30 days, we've been pretty constant in the monetization. We've been monetizing about like 4.58 million pixel a month, and we distributed about like 15 to 20. So basically what we want to be getting to in the next like year or two is almost like break even when it comes to emissions versus token burn. And to do that, there's a couple things we need to do, right? We need to make the game better. We have to introduce more monetization and more ways to use the pixel inside of the game that makes sense to you guys, that people actually like to use the pixel token in. And we also have to figure out what's the best way to give these rewards to people in a way that might actually lead to more monetization too. So it's interesting because if we were a Web2 game company talking about this, right, it's like pure extraction. The Web3 side of things is interesting because we actually give you the pixel token, right? And you're a part of this network as well too. And what we're trying to figure out is basically how do we create an ecosystem that can be sustainable and last for like the next 5 years. And what I will say confidently is if we don't start increasing this pixel spent inside of the game to like net positive levels eventually, it doesn't need to happen right away, right? Like the startup mindset and like typically like growth stage company, which is where I would say that we're at, is typically like not profitable initially. But if you don't have a clear trajectory there, then there's basically no hope for the project, right? So yeah, we talk about this a lot, and this is like maybe going to be where the focus shifts after we get chapter 2 out. So how do we create new ways to use the pixel token? How do we make it feel fun, engaging to you guys? And then how do we distribute the pixel token to like the different types of users inside of the ecosystem? How do we create incentive structures that, you know, keep you guys engaged, keep you guys playing the game? And then how do we also shift it to start moving towards these metrics that we want to do too? So tons of core tech there. That's kind of what we're building out. I think we'll dive into that more in detail in the next AMA. Essentially, what we're doing inside of Pixel is we're going to break the team up into 3 teams, and that's what we're growing and building right now. We're going to have a live ops team, so basically a team that's building out content, building out like all the experiences inside of the game that you interact with day to day. Right now, there's not really as much content in the game as we would like, but when we start to introduce chapter 2, essentially the focus is going to be one, getting out like more and more content pack releases every single like I think we're thinking like every 2 weeks or at least every month there'll be like new content inside of the game that builds on top of this base that we built out. So you'll kind of see when we start to demo chapter 2 land progression, like what that could look like. For example, when we release chapter 2 initially, we're going to release this new core loop. It's going to change the way you interact with the game. We showed you guys what that looked like with the specs not too long ago. You'll see what it looks like on the land too. And I think you'll kind of start to see what it looks like when we start to introduce new kinds of content. Like we'll show gem cutting today too, which will be probably the first content pack release. And we'll go into that. And then, yeah, the next stage after that, like step 3, when we think about where Pixels is going to be, is how do we start to take this core technology that we're building around reward distribution and how do we apply it to more areas as well too? So there's a couple things that we're going to start experimenting with that. We're already planting the seeds. Like we'll probably start building out our own titles in addition to Pixels. And there's some cool stuff that we can do with that. So we'll probably start the seeds of like some more casual games inside of this ecosystem that use the token, monetize off the token. And there's some cool stuff that we can do with like incentivization to have you guys download new apps, things like that as well too. Like if we give you guys like a 5 pixel reward for downloading a new app that we build out, that's maybe like a Candy Crush clone. The other thing that we've been talking about is acquisitions of other games too, or like what that would look like in the Web3 native ways too. So we're in a really fortunate spot with the ecosystem treasury where that actually might be a valid use of the treasury that we have as well too, where it's like, okay, there's teams out there that maybe have been struggling to raise, have built like really great product, but don't know how to build or don't know how to grow their audience, don't know how to grow their incentive structures. That's actually a really, really good place for us, right? Because we are really good at growth, really good at incentive design. And if we can start to apply this general engine that we built out when it comes to reward distribution, incentive design, and direct to consumer rewards, the goal is we want to generalize this and get this in other ecosystems and other games as well too. So we'll talk about what that looks like maybe more next week, but that's kind of the key unlock here. It's like we don't necessarily need to get to net positive like pixel spend inside of the ecosystem right away. It doesn't even necessarily have to be just through this core Pixels game that we're releasing. It could be done with basically multiple cuts or like multiple different areas of games. So yeah, we'll dig into that, what that looks like. We can't really talk too much about what those plans look like when it comes to some of the further growth right now. But yeah, we're planting the seeds of that now. We're having some discussions already. So cool stuff there. Now, all that said, let's dive into chapter 2. Let's kind of show you guys what that looks like. We've been playing a lot internally.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm gonna show you a bunch of stuff. I was just gonna say, I usually have 60-second slow mode on for our AMAs, and the chat was absolutely insane. So I just upped it to 2 minutes, but give me some feedback on that. On our side, it's always on slow mode. Like it's always kind of slow. So I have to like hop back and forth. Let me know. But you guys have been great. We've been getting some really fun questions. So maybe while Luke is kind of preparing that, actually, you know what? No, let's talk chapter 2 first, then we'll dive into the questions. So,
okay, I can share my screen now. So here's my test account.
Wait, coming.
So here, I'm gonna hop into my spec because that's where we started last week, right? Like we showed you guys the spec experience and we showed you guys what it looks like when you kind of have like a fully upgraded spec. So if you guys remember, we demoed this spec. This is a spec that I built out that has a bunch of tier 1 and 2 resource generators. And it's a lot different compared to how the game looks now, right? What we've introduced is we've introduced a ton of new industries, and we've kind of changed the way that these industries work too. So we're kind of focusing on two different areas in chapter 2, right? We're focusing on the free-to-play experience. We're focused on, what does it look like if you don't own NFT land? How do we make that gameplay a bit more interesting? How do we add progression inside of the game? And how does this tie in with the NFT land as well too? So the key concept we were starting to introduce is more progression and more milestones that you can hit internally inside of the game. What this is going to do is this is going to make the skilling that you do inside of the game matter more. The skills are actually quite important because you don't actually get access to these resources unless you level up a bit. And then also there's like a lot more things you're going to have to think about when it comes to trade-offs, all this kind of stuff. And we'll show you what that looks like on the NFT land, because the NFT land is kind of the full expression, the full exaggeration of these resource specializations. And it's going to tie really interestingly into like guild gameplay, like how you spend your time, how you spend your energy, all this as well too. So just a refresher, this is my spec. Specs, what they can do is they can get bigger. You can pay coins or pixel to start upgrading your spec, and you'll get access to tier 1 and tier 2 resources on your spec. There's only so far that you can take it, but there's actually there's a lot more depth in terms of the gameplay when you come here. So last week I was kind of showing you guys, I was trying to upgrade to like a copper pick, a copper axe, so I could start actually collecting the resources on my spec, because if you don't have the right tool, just like in most MMOs or RPGs that you guys play, you actually can't collect the resources that you need. So if you look at my inventory now, I have a tier 3 pick, finally, a bronze pick. And here is an example of a tier 1 mine. Here's an example of a tier 2 mine. Since I have this better pick, I can finally go here. But I actually can't craft the tier 3 pick unless I have access to a tier 3 woodworking bench. So here, we showed you guys the tier 1 and the tier 2 woodworking benches before, right? If you have a tier 1 woodworking bench, that'll be like the first progression that you guys have. I can go and craft a makeshift axe. I can go and craft a makeshift pick. Tier 2 unlocks the copper and the copper axe and copper pick. Now, if I was to go to my task board, again, this is a very leveled up account. This is like all level 90s. This is actually going to be pretty hard to get to. If you've ever played an MMO, like RuneScape or MapleStory or any of these kind of stuff, you kind of know the experience that it's like. But we have, again, a new task board inside of chapter 2. And the task board, what it does is it also levels up with your skills. So you get better tasks the higher level that you skill up. But then also what that means is you have to get better resources if you want to get access, or if you actually want to turn in tasks here. So if you look in this task board, since I'm a high level account, I have a lot of tier 3 tasks inside of this task board. And if you notice, I can't get the tier 3 resources on top of this spec. So what's my gameplay experience look like when I level up a bit further? Well, I actually have to interact with NFT land. So I have NFT land.
We have before we move on to NFT lands, there's a really good question here. So if I didn't upgrade my spec, but I have higher skill level, can I craft higher tier in NFT lands, or do I need to upgrade my spec to craft higher tier materials on NFT lands? Okay, so there's spec upgrades and there are industry upgrades. There are tool upgrades. Like when I say upgrades, I mean tiering up, like getting higher tiers. And then of course you're leveling up your skills. So all of these different areas, you need to level all of them up to be able to participate in the like highest form of gameplay, I would say. So Luke, let's say if he didn't have a high enough skill to interact with a really high tier mine, he's going to have to level up his skill set first before he can participate with that sort of gameplay, right? And so spec upgrades, like you're saying, they just increase the size, not your skill set, not the industries. So these are all different areas that you'll have to work to upgrade.
Exactly. But if I don't have the like proper things on my own spec, I can go and visit somebody's land and actually use their, upgraded woodworking benches, all this kind of stuff too. So it's not just my own land I can go to. I can still go to somebody else's land. And that's where guilds and some of this other stuff comes into play too, because land is going to change when it comes to like the utility a lot, right? Right now, you can go to anybody's land. It's getting a bit more restricted, right? Because you're seeing that some people want access to all their own resources and they don't want to share with others. Now, you can see this is my land that I've upgraded. This is a small NFT land. It's still got a lot of room to put some stuff in, right? And what I've done here is I kind of have been optimizing.
In the the game. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. No, it's funny because yeah, I had my tab muted, but here we'll just keep the sound on. The sound is good, but maybe not the music. So yeah, we
It's the opposite. The sound is the loud part. The music's like fun background.
Fair enough. Okay, both off. So yeah, I have a land here. You can see that there's other people coming to my land to use it, right? And these people on my land, they might not have all of these, higher tier woodworking benches, but I put in the work, and I don't have time to use all of my resources that I built, like my mines by myself the entire time. Now, people who I allow onto my land, I have a couple of settings, right? We've actually changed guilds to have a bit more permissioning as well too, where, there's different roles inside of guilds moving forward. There's, the supporter, if you just want to buy shards. There's a member, if you actually want to join a guild and be like a part of this guild, you're going to have to actually like stake your shards of the guild to the guild. It's like a new interesting mechanic we'll go into maybe in the next AMA as well too, but we're kind of changing the way that guild membership works. And then there's different roles beyond the membership as well too. There's manager, there's, I don't know if we're calling it farmer or we're calling it like, I think someone suggested peasant. That's not the right way to say it. But yeah, basically the guild will have more control over who gets access to the resources inside of this as well too. And they'll have fine-tuned control. Basically, it's like the whitelist feature, where, just because you're a member of a guild doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to give you access to all of this kind of stuff. But yeah, here, I can go into my land now, and I can kind of show you guys what my experience looks like now too. So I have a couple of goals that I've been working towards. I built some tier 4 mines. I actually don't have a tier 4 pick yet. But if you go here, you can see that there's a couple of more mines here as well too. So if you look, there's still the tier 1 and tier 2 mines that I put on my spec because I still have like some need for some of the lower tier resources. Like I want to turn in some of the task force tasks, right, that still require copper or still require bronze. But I also have access to these mines too, where these are like the tier 3 ones that I've upgraded. And now I can finally start to craft some stuff too. I've added some metalworking benches here too. And yeah, one of the things I was working on building was, yeah, I was going to build shears actually. That's something I have prepped. So if you look at my inventory right now, all I have is tier 1 shears. I have the makeshift shears. I actually can't farm on some of the higher level farming resources. So here, I'm just going to go and upgrade my shears finally. I think I have all the resources to do it. So yeah, I have the tier 1 shears, the makeshift shears. I'm going to go and upgrade them to copper shears now. It's going to take 30 seconds, so bear with me here. And I'll upgrade them one more time into the tier 3. And I think I might have enough resources for the tier 4 as well too. But yeah, you can see that like my land is pretty busy. We have some just kind of showing you guys what it looks like when multiple people are working on this kind of stuff. Again, all this stuff now is single use, right? So you have Heidi mining this mine. But
I just got 10 iron. Let's
nice.
go. That's a good one.
And yeah, you can see that other players have been planting crops here on my land. Here, let me go and grab these now. Okay, cool. They're ready. Copper shears. Now I'm going to upgrade to the bronze shears. I have 9 bronze bars, these copper screws that I've been working on getting. It takes a bit of time to upgrade all your stuff, and that's kind of supposed to be the point too. So basically, like people who are playing more and progressing more through the game, their opportunity is going to be bigger, and it's going to matter a lot more too. So this accomplishes a couple things, right? One, what we're trying to do is we're trying to shift rewards to players who progress further through the game more. And what this does is, one, it creates an incentive structure for you to just get further through the game. Two, it makes the game a little bit harder to bot, right? If you just come into the game and you're, a bad actor and you are trying to basically just like extract as many resources out of pixels, you won't really be able to get the best rewards unless you're further through the game. So one, what this does is this shifts rewards further through progression. So if you are a bad actor, we have more time to catch you. Two, the resources in NFT lands work very differently than specs, right? So here's the scenario, right? If you're a bad actor and you create 1,000 accounts, right? You can create 1,000 specs. You're probably going to be able to still bot the tier 1 and tier 2 resources if you are really on top of the tech. There's some crazy stuff in the space right now. where there's only so much detection that's actually possible, if I'm being brutally honest. And a lot of what we're working on is shifting the reward structures, the incentive design to actually favor long-term players instead for this reason. But then there's scarcity now with the high tier resources too. There's only so many NFT lands. And because this stuff is single use, there's only so many people that can be using this stuff at once, right? So it's actually much more advantageous to be either an NFT landowner to have access to all these resource generators just by yourself, or to join a guild too. So you're gonna have to kind of work your way up through the progression, and you won't need to right away. But essentially, as people level up more and more, as people get further through the game loops, then it's become more of a need, right? So somebody just take my bronze shears. Tell me no.
No, you
Okay.
can't. You're good.
Okay, yeah. So here, so this is a tier 3 metalworking stage. I actually can't craft the next tier of shears unless I go to this tier 4. I only have one because it was kind of hard to get, and it took me a long time to get up there. Oh shoot, I need a copper screw. Okay, I'm gonna craft a copper screw really quickly, and then I'll be able to get this tier 4 shear. So here, yeah, copper. Since I'm further through the game, it's pretty easy for me to get. You get it through the tier 1 mines. It takes a bit
I
of
have some
time.
screws if you need it.
What was that?
I have some copper screws if you need them.
Oh, I just needed one more. Okay, here. Got my copper screw. Now I can come in and it had, see, yeah, I can't, yeah, I can't use this metalworking thing if somebody else is in front of it. So that's some more interesting dynamics. Oh, I need 2 more copper screws. Yeah, can you give me some?
Yeah, where are you? There you are. Hopefully my reputation score is high enough. Okay, seems like it is. How many do you need? 2?
Yeah, just 2.
Okay, no, wait. I don't think it's working. I think my reputation score isn't high enough.
Okay, this is a preview
This is
environment.
a account. Please remember everyone.
Okay, here, I'm gonna craft 2 more. And this is also why it's kind of nice to have multiple crafting benches inside of your land, because then I can just craft a bunch at a time, right? Otherwise, I'd have to wait a long time. So yeah, what we're probably going to start to see is specialization inside of NFT land too. And we'll show you guys what that looks like as we prepped some specialized NFT land too.
Yeah, should we do the other one?
Yeah, I have to make these shears first because I can't farm anything until I do that. Here, finally can do this. So
he has
here
a
we
gold.
go. Iron shears, big accomplishment here.
This is the thing. No, but you guys don't understand. Like, it's so addictive. I was supposed to be doing other work, and instead I was just play testing, and calling it play testing is an excuse for me to feel good about just gaming all the time. So it's that addictive. I'm just so excited.
Yeah, it's just like, so this is like the core thing that we're doing. We're trying to just make gameplay that makes more sense. It's funny because I was introducing some friends to Pixels just the other day even, and we know it doesn't really make sense when you come into the game right now. Still, there's a lot of work that we need to do there, and this is the base that we're building out. So here, I finally got my iron shears. Where are they? Yeah, thank God. Okay, so now, yeah, you guys saw my land. Maybe we move over to Heidi's land, because you can see that I've been focusing on some certain types of gameplay. Like, I was really trying to work up and like get more tools built out. And I'm interested to see what the secondary market of these tools look like too, right? Because it's not so easy to get them. If you don't want to work your way up to them, you can just go and buy them on the marketplace from other players, right? It starts to introduce some new economics here, especially as, you know, we scale up players, we scale up all this kind of stuff. So cool. Let's go over to Heidi's land.
So as per usual, my land is really pretty compared to Luke's. So, so that's my goal, obviously, is to always make it kind of just pretty. If you zoom out, you'll see all around, I have tier 1 trees everywhere. They're all circling around the outside. And then I have little clumps of the tier, 2, 3, and 4. And then I kind of have like one of every tier of a bunch of different industries. You can see some crops I've planted here. No, you can't steal them. However, if I leave those crops to die and they're dead, then Luke can steal those seeds. So if you ever see dead crops, you can go and steal those seeds from that person.
Nice. Yeah.
It actually makes sense if I share my screen just so that I can show some gameplay. Or you want to show
I'm trying to get my own seeds here. I have some storage.
Let me share my screen so that I can show some gameplay from like my perspective.
Do it.
Hold on. Let me do it. Let me do it. There we go. Okay. All right, so this is my farm, right? So we've got these fun little signs, which you'll be able to get also just to like make things super obvious if you want. But yeah, so I've got all 4 tiers of metalworking here, got all my mines, so we can collect some material, not enough space in inventory, of course. So speaking of inventory, this is a great leeway into, there will be different tiers of craftable boxes also. So look, we go all the way up to tier 5 and you get 5 rows. So there's lots of opportunities in here. And you might have just seen a little like, what is that? So we have this industry. It probably won't come in the very first release, but Luke did allude to it. So I will show you. It's called gem cutting. I'm not going to talk too much about its use case and whatnot either, but I'm going to show you because it looks so cool. So this is the highest tier of the industry. And you just kind of chip away here and you cut your own beautiful gem. So my inventory is full, so I won't be able to collect it, but you can see that beautiful gem right there. So yeah, you might see these little flowers coming around here. That's another maybe possible future release. I'm not sure if it's coming initially or not, but I want to show you some really fun things indoors. So we've got different tiers of stoves as well. I've got my own task board here. I saw some questions. People are like, oh, is the task board coin only? No. It's still pixel. This is just a testing thing. Don't take things too, seriously, because there's different things here. But anyways, there's a little fun gameplay with your bed, which I'm still in a cooldown, so you won't be able to see, but you might be able to get a little bit of energy there. But you can see my bed is pretty ugly and pretty boring. So I actually have a custom duvet that I've purchased. And yeah, you can like go in your bed. And there's some other fun stuff in here too. So I've got some wallpaper if I want to decorate my house. So there's going to be lots of different opportunities to kind of customize. There's a fun little rotator tool too, which will give you some like paneling if you want it. Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff coming. I think I have this other wallpaper here. Let's go up. My house is pretty empty right now. I haven't decorated it a lot, but you can see over here, I've got some different types of wallpaper. There's like a whole bunch. This one's kind of more fun because I think oh no, it doesn't. Okay, yeah, but it has the same kind of like, you don't have to do that if you don't want, but it's kind of fun. All right, and then this is a big house. So big NFT lands have 2 extra rooms at the top. So, or sorry, 1 extra room. Every land will have a pool, and to keep it a nice color, you will have to put, I mean, we've called it chlorine internally. It might be called something else. It might look totally different, but you got to keep it clean, guys. Not sure if there will be like immediate utility with this pool here, but future. And then we have, this is specific to NFT lands, NFT houses that are large, have this solarium at the top. And that's where you can plant these special flowers. And we haven't nailed in like the balance for these yet, but just stay tuned for that. And you will only be able to plant these sorts of flowers in the large houses up here. So yeah, if you go back outside, let's go back outside. You'll be able to see all of those flowers I put everywhere. There's 3 types. I'm not sure if you can only plant like aqua ones on water lands or not. Like I said, that one's still a little bit in design. But yeah, they're pretty fun, pretty cool. Just like a tiny little fun extra feature. Yeah, and you can see I've got some people that are using my stoves, or they were using my stoves. So there's some leftover time with the wood there. And then actually, wait, let's go in here. So this is an elevator. This is going to take me down to my very own cave basement. So a lot of people have been asking like, what will happen to my existing house and items and everything. So you're going to find it all in here, and then you can remove it and take it upstairs as you please. But there will be some, gameplay future releases and whatnot with caves, as you guys know. So every house on NFT Lands does have their own little cave down here.
Yeah, so that leads to some interesting discussion of like what it looks like that we're working on afterwards. So essentially, we'll get some content packs out. Like that's when we talk about splitting the team, right? Basically, we'll have people still working on live ops. So you'll still get these content packs, and that's kind of where the live ops team will focus on. Basically, more content that you guys get access to that you guys can just like make videos about. It's like more fun gameplay. What I want to start focusing on too is more like single player story content and narrative, all this kind of stuff. So that's what that team will kind of just like full time do basically. So yeah, we've been kind of content starved, but that's one of the most that's like the most fun part of these games, I think. So starting to finally get some narrative, starting to get some like single player content too, and some more actionable steps to progress through the game as well. Like, I grew up playing RuneScape, right? And one of the like biggest flexes that you get when you go through RuneScape is doing some of the harder quests like Regicide, or if you played like all the ape quests, things like that. So we'll start to introduce that too. But then as that's going on, the core team will actually start to work on the bigger updates as well, which the next focus when it comes to like larger systems changes will be the contestable lands. So right now in tier when you go through the NFT land, right, there's tier 3 and tier 4 resources available on NFT lands. What we're going to be introducing is new gameplay that introduces higher tiers. And these higher tier resources will be available only on specific types of this new type of land that we're going on, building out basically. And this is something that guilds are going to have to compete for. Or, I mean, maybe a whale player might just be able to do this himself too. But the goal is essentially him or her. Like the goal is essentially to create like new systems where people finally start competing for the highest tier and like the highest like progression inside of the game as well too. So it's going to be harder to get them. They're going to be extremely scarce, the tier 5 and tier 6 resources, and there'll be competition to get them. So that's like the long term that we're getting to. Like realistically, I don't think we're going to start development on that essentially right after we release chapter 2. But it's going to take a few months to get that live. But that'll be like more interesting end game that we finally need, and we're super excited about that. So yeah, what land are you on right now?
So this is 177. This one has been set up a little differently. Obviously, it's got tons of soils, and technically we could put it across the entire land. Let's see if I have some seeds here. I do. So the tier 1 are the kind of like blank looking ones. So I can plant some pops in here.
Yeah, have too many tier 4 soils. The tier 4 soils are not the easiest to get. It takes a bit of time to progress through there. So what's going to be interesting is when we first release this update, it's going to be kind of a race to get like on the NFT lands, all the best stuff, right? It's going to be like a big selling point of your land and your guild as well too, right? So the people that progress quicker are probably going to have the biggest upside and the biggest rewards when it comes to like all the incentive structures that we're getting. So yeah, it's like one reason why it's actually kind of important for you guys who are active players in the game to follow these AMAs, because you're going to know the stuff you're going to have to like work towards quickly. People who aren't really following this, you have a kind of step ahead of them.
Yeah, so you can see I was just watering like everyone's planted seeds. So there is some fun gameplay there. If you feel like helping out a buddy, you can come over here and just water for them. But yeah, so you can see it's a really fun multiplayer. Like I can see guilds working together on this. It'll be really fun to see. Also, like just like scheduling, like you guys been scheduling like crazy already. So yeah, so this is an example of a land that has like more of a focus on farming, and I can imagine lands that are literally like 100% covered in this. But yeah.
We bookmarked a couple, or at least I did. So here I can show you guys what like some of the other specializations look like. For example, the high tier trees are like quite hard to get to. And what I expect us to see is I expect us to see some people that just focus on one thing. It's funny because we had this early in the game too. Like I remember some girl playing, she called herself Tree, and she was like,
"Oh yeah,
I kept
I've seen it for a while."
yeah, and like that kind of gameplay is actually going to make a lot of sense in chapter 2 when like the gameplay just kind of has to shift towards that. So here, I'm going to share this screen
Wait,
here.
hold on. Let's go to what was it, 157? Is that the one that had
1014 here? I'm sharing my screen now. So here's a land that somebody just like went super hard on trees with, and there's so many trees here, right? And it looks like a lot. Cool, yeah, but when you have a bunch of people that want these trees, you know how it goes now already with chapter 1, right? Trees are like still pretty competitive, but there's a lot more here to share between all the people who might be using this land as well, right? And this took this person a long time to get these, is what I can say as well. So this is kind of more end game when it comes to the NFT land. And yeah, I think they also did something similar with soil on the farm next over. So yeah, it's interesting because like you only have so many things that you can focus on at once as a player, right? Like it's gonna be hard to upgrade your soil, get all these mines, get all the trees all at once. Like you probably won't be able to. So you know that's why you make friends, right? Oh no, this one's empty.
Barnes Land. Wasn't it one? Hold on.
Well, yeah, here's an example of one that I built out also. Oh, it's one of my lands.
One
157. Yeah,
This one's
157 all mines.
yeah. Yeah, so you can see the difference, right? Like there's people that will care about trees, there's people that will care about only having high tiered mines. And then like my land, I wanted a range of everything and also for it to just look pretty. So there's lots of different ways that people will be playing. I'm actually so excited to see how that all forms and transforms and whatnot.
Yeah, the other thing that you're going to notice too is the way that these mines work is a bit different than before as well, where there's more effort sometimes to get the actual resource from it too. So if you notice, like sometimes when I use a mine, it fails. The higher tier picks that you guys have, the less failures that you're going to have as well too. So it's less energy usage when you're trying to get resources from these mines. Yeah, here we go. Now I have a couple that are in progress and going. So it's like a 3-minute cooldown. And I think that's a lot of the gameplay that we're moving towards too, where it's a little bit less waiting when you go to play the game in chapter 2. And that's kind of intentional because you're sharing a lot of the resources, right? So rather than making you guys wait a day to come back for some of the crops, it's like, okay, if you're in the game and you're playing actively, you'll probably get most of the resources that you want in that day. And the
It is
limiters,
important.
yeah. Yeah, and let's see. I think there was one other land maybe that we could show to. Oh, I mean, this is Nellie's. This is different, but
I don't
yeah,
know if this is set up, is it? Fully? Yeah, okay. She has
no,
some
it's set up. Yeah, she developed it in like kind of a different way too, where she's like focused on all this other stuff as well.
yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, any other farm that you want to go and check out or show people, or
I think we're good, but we've got like 15 minutes left and we've gone 0 questions. So why don't we dive into some questions here and then we can like continue to like show gameplay in relation to your different kinds of questions. So, okay. Let's see if there's any chapter 2 related questions first, and then we can obviously talk about everything else. Okay. This question, obviously, this person's trying to be a little snarky. Chapter 2 coming April 8th. Okay, so I've addressed this a few times. When we said the April 8th date, it's because we were thinking about releasing things in small chunks, which we obviously will still continue to do. But as you can see, chapter 2 is going to be like a major gameplay change, like coming all at once. So instead of releasing like one tiny thing on April 8th and then one tiny thing 2 weeks later, we decided to kind of clump a lot of it all together into one big release, which is why this April 8th date has obviously been pushed back a lot. And yeah, we've been pretty transparent about that.
yeah. So also just like complete transparency too, there were some certain areas in the company where we're trying to just basically get the right people in the right places. We're hiring more, all this kind of stuff too. So there was like a bit of yeah, just like scaling issues internally that we're addressing as well too. And that's just like part of the natural process of like, you know, building something that gets more traction, right? I mean, so one, I want to call out and like give some compliments to the devs. We're hitting really serious numbers of concurrent users and daily active users. Again, like some of it's bot activity. We're not shy about talking about this because this is one of the most important issues when it comes to building any sustainable game economy. And it's like a lot of the stuff that we're doing here is trying to address this, but also like in terms of tech and infrastructure, there's a lot of work that we have to do to make that actually still feasible. There is a big difference between building a game that supports 10,000 DAU versus a million, regardless of where that traffic is coming from. And yeah, we're finally kind of like past some of the scaling issues when it comes to infrastructure, all this other kind of stuff too. And now we're kind of addressing some of this stuff. So yeah, as you scale up, basically things just start to break. And some of these processes broke down too. Like we're not shy about this kind of stuff. Like yeah, we're building this with you guys, right? And we don't want to hide anything from you. We're not trying to like trick anybody here. Yeah, we just want to be like completely open to you guys about this because yeah, what we really do appreciate about all of you guys is you guys are active players that really care about the game, and that is something that we don't take for granted. Yeah, it's the biggest advantage of tools, right? You guys are so insanely passionate, and it's a double-edged sword sometimes, right? If we miss some things, then Yeah, we hear it, but also we hear it, and we want to make it better for you guys.
Yeah. Okay. Some other questions here. Can we steal crops? So I already addressed this, but let me just be clear. So I cannot steal crops that are ready to harvest. They're still ripe. They're ready to go. I cannot steal those. But once they're dead, I can steal those seeds. So if someone it leaves their crops there and just like doesn't come back for them, once they're dead, you can steal them. Okay.
Here's a good question. So since levels are needed to upgrade tools and industries, is it possible just to give high level tools to lower skill players and be able to find high tier resources? No, so you need certain skill levels to actually use these tools too. So if
Yeah.
you're not high enough skill level, then you can't use the tools. So I mean, if you're an early stage player, you're gonna have to like level up and get through the game a bit further to actually get these resources as well.
Yeah. Okay. So will there be permissions for accessing specs? So from what I understand, other people can't use the industries on your specs, just for like bot prevention. But let me double check with that.
Not yet. So how I kind of think that we're addressing this is we're starting with permissioning on land. And then at a certain point, right, land is going to get a little too scarce. And that's when we might start bringing in spec permissions too. So I know there's a few guilds that are oriented just around specs. And that will probably be like the second stage of gameplay that we address as we start to scale that further. Because it probably does make sense to like share built out specs if you get them like pretty far progressed. But still, you won't get access to the tier 3 and tier 4 resources that way. But it's a good starting point too, and those resources are still important. And yeah, we'll start to address what that looks like too. But we have to focus on this first core loop.
Yeah. Okay. So great question. What about cooking and grills and like other special industries? Like if we're talking like apiaries, the sluggery, textiles, and whatnot. So in these AMAs, we really want to focus on like the changes that are coming in the first release, which is the tiering system of the what we're calling kind of like the main core loops, which would be, you know, the cooking, the metalworking, all of those ones, which is what we've been highlighting here. We haven't talked about textiling, apiaries, and sluggery and all of that because they're initially not going to change. And how they change in the future, I'm not really sure. I would say, I'm not going to say never kind of thing. We have no plans to change some of them. Some of the other ones, we might implement a different tiering system, but it'll come in a while. So that's why we haven't talked about them because they will not be changing initially.
Yeah, here's a good question. So bots dominate single-use industries. This is bot heaven, actually. So this is why we're introducing the guild permissioning, right? So NFT land, it's scarce, right? There's only so many NFT lands around. Now, if a bot comes onto an NFT land, what it's actually doing, because all these industries are single use, is it's taking resources away from you. And you have an incentive, therefore, as like a guild manager or like a landowner, to not let that happen, right? Because if a bot is taking away your industries, then they probably shouldn't. So that's why we've introduced permissioning inside of the guilds, and we're introducing more fine-tuned permissioning as well, where yeah, it basically is like it's almost zero sum in a way for these end tier resources. And the idea is one, this introduces more like community oriented cyber prevention, if that makes sense. Basically, you almost have to whitelist the best users inside of your own land if you actually want to be able to use your own land, right? So yeah, if you leave your land public, it might get botted by bots who get further through the game. But also, there's a lot more progression that needs to happen for these bots, and there's more in-depth gameplay where it gives us more time to catch them as well. So it's kind of like what we talk about when we talk about cyber and bot prevention is there's multiple layers, right? There's the prevention side at the very beginning, so that would be things like the fingerprinting stuff that we've been doing, the retroactive bans, the blocks. Then there's also like potentially other options when it comes to KYC. Putting the paywall like VIP in front of it helps as well too. And then there's also the reputation system, which we're going to start to build out and like fine tune even better. We haven't put as many resources into the reputation side as we would like, but that's kind of what we're hiring for right now. When I say that we're splitting the team into 3 teams, again, it's going to be live ops, it's going to be core game systems, and then it's going to be data analytics and incentive design. And that's what that team will probably focus on at the very beginning, essentially building out a better and more smart reputation system than what we have right now. The reputation system early on was working kind of well, but there's some adjustments that we need there. So essentially, we have more data that we can look at now to fine tune what the reputation system looks like. That'll help some of the stuff. The idea is basically we want to make it as easy as possible for real players to get through the reputation system and harder for bots. So there's like some certain things that we can look at there with that. But obviously, it's not perfect too because bots can modify their behavior as well. But yeah, it's all part of the process, right? So also part of what we're thinking about a lot lately is the shifting of rewards to better reward people who get further through the game, and also incentivizing like other things too. So when I think about incentive design and reward design, like you have to think about what metrics that you're trying to optimize for. And right now we've been focused on DAU, right? Like we focus on basically getting as many users as possible inside of the game, and that's good. We'll still keep some of the broader and more spread out rewards, but also creating rewards that lead to further progression inside of the game, and concentrating more of the rewards on the end progression also does some really interesting stuff when it comes to that as well. It maybe shifts the focus away from like DAU and focuses it more towards real dedicated users, which is a shift, right? It's a different balance when we think about like the stuff that we're focused on. But we think it's the better one in the long run too, because we think it's going to lead to players who like the game more, who actually might want to be using the pixel token. And when we think about the North Stars, right, we're shifting what our main focus is from just increasing DAU to increasing pixel spend in the long run as well. So that means that, like, really what we need to figure out is how do we give people pixel to the people who actually want to be using pixel, right? And then there's some other tiny things we'll start working on too. Like one thing that I want to start experimenting with is when we talk about incentive pools and reward pools. Like I think it actually makes sense to start introducing some kind of staking element inside of the game for more pixel rewards too. That will be after chapter 2. Basically, like core focus from the team right now is getting chapter 2 out because it's been too long. We got to get it out. Like I have all hands on deck for this right now. Then we can start to shift some of the other focuses to this side of things as well too.
Okay. All right. Some other questions. So how does tree density work with NFTs? So basically, like we've been showing you some lands that have been really built out, but it's going to take a long time to get these places looking like that. So NFTs with existing trees, especially like the high density ones, are going to have a major leg up because they will automatically already have all of the tiers of trees. So what is it? Light density will have fewer, obviously. None will have none, and then what's the word? High density. What's the word? I'm blanking. Obviously they'll have a lot, so you'll already have those higher tier trees. So you're gonna like have a major leg up. Okay. Other questions in here?
Yeah, there are now so here I'm gonna address this. There are more advanced cheats coming out inside of the game, is what we can say. We are aware of them. I don't want to talk too much about it, but we generally know. So again, if you see a game client or an extension or something like that that feels unfair, do not use it because that's going to get your account banned. Like again, our focus and priority is on protecting real and loyal users. We're also starting to introduce more tooling in the next month as well too. We're like trialing and demoing if some other people have built some interesting stuff. So again, the cheating thing, it's like there's a few methods of attack to it. And it's a holistic approach, right? It's not just one thing that's going to stop everything. There's the detection side, there's the prevention side, there's also shifting the rewards to make it so that cheating doesn't benefit you either. And it's like part game design too. So chapter 2, it's the base. We're introducing more stuff afterwards. But yeah, it's part of it. Here, I saw another one too. It's a replay of the last AMA. They're repeating the same things over and over. When release date, please. What I can say is like now I feel actually a much higher level of confidence that we'll get this out in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Don't hold me to that too hard. Like we're not going to release it if it feels really bad, but it's at a point now where I think we can start getting some of the farmhands and maybe some other people afterwards into the game to start play testing as well. So now that we're kind of shifting from like, okay, is chapter 2 functional and working? What we want to make sure is we have a feel of like fairness. So there are a couple questions about skill level reset in chapter 2, all this kind of stuff. So skill levels will not reset. The resources that you have, we might do a conversion from old resources into some of these new ones. That's what we're going to start to get feedback from our most active players on first. So we have the farmhand role, right? We're going to start to bring them in for play testing. And we're going to get their feedback before we do anything crazy when it comes to basically like how do we translate the progress from chapter 2 into chapter 1. So we'll get direct player feedback on that, and we'll make sure that feels good, respected, and fair. Basically, what I can say is if you've put work, if you've gathered resources, from chapter 1. We are going to respect that as best as we can. I don't want 100,000 angry players in my Twitter comments being like, how did you screw me over like that? We're not going to have that situation, basically. So we're going to make sure, like, that's kind of going to be the next 2 or 3 weeks, basically, like working with all of our like most active players, getting them inside of the game, making sure that we have like a very good community idea of the changes that we're making and how they feel about it. So it's not just in this AMA, but it's actually getting direct feedback from these people so that we understand the changes that we're making here so that it's all respected. So yeah, what I can say is like, it's looking like 3 to 4 weeks. Finally, we're almost there. Like honestly, I think if we really, really wanted to, we could probably release this next week now, but I think it's probably better that we get player feel first so we don't make mistakes when it comes to actually releasing this, and we get the feedback from like actual players of the game first too. So one thing that we're working on right now is actually we're going to import all the production data, like all the live game data, into our like test environments and bring people into our test environments. They actually get their real in-game data inside of the game so they can test all of that. They can feel like, okay, what does it actually look like now that I'm a new player in chapter 2? And you know, with all my old items, with all my skill levels, like how do I play the game now?
Okay. Okay, let's go to some other random questions that we got here. So when you guys bring in more NFT collections as avatars, we're constantly working with projects. We get, as you imagine, we get inundated with requests. So we're continuously rolling them out. We just had a couple release, I think last week and the week before. Will chapter 2 include new tutorials for new players? So we're actually, okay, so our player base is huge, right? Like we've got a lot of people playing every day. So the focus of this release is really for our existing player base. However, we have been revamping our onboarding to make it more new user friendly. So I'm not going to say that there are a whole bunch of new quests. It's more like a holistically revamped onboarding that should make things smoother for new players.
Oh yeah, some people are asking about the missing skills. So they looked at the skill levels. They see that there's less of them now. So yeah, essentially what we're going to be doing is skill consolidation. That's one of the things that we'll get feedback on from real players. But basically, we're just going to combine a lot of the XP from different skills and put it into one. It's going to make more sense. Like it's kind of weird right now that you have like all these different industries that are just skill specific. What we're trying to do in chapter 2 is set the base for something that just makes more sense than it did before. What we did was we brought on like really good design talent. If you, again, I was bringing in a bunch of people from chapter 1, and like if you even are like a person who's not familiar with pixels, you come into it, it just doesn't make sense in a lot of areas, right? It's just, yeah, we did what we could in the early stages, right? And that's part of growing and building a company and like building a thing where like sometimes in the early stages you got to do what you got to do to make things happen. Now we're in a spot where we're an industry leader, which is amazing, but we actually have to act like it, and we have to actually build out stuff that makes sense to other people as well. And we know that we're very fortunate and lucky to be in this spot. We know that success is not guaranteed, right? Like that's something I've been iterating to the team the whole time. Pixels is not one by any means. We have not figured things out. We don't know what's going to work in Web3 for sure yet still. We have a decent idea. There's some things that we've been doing that have been working, but there's still a lot of stuff that we need to do if we actually want to build something that's going to last in the long run. Now, my own personal focus and goals is I could be doing a lot of other things in my life, right? Like I don't have to be working on pixels. I was very happy in my life before this. And if I'm working on something on my own personal like motivation side of this, like I want to build something that works. And I'm not here to like grip the space. I'm not here to build something that I don't have actual personal conviction in. So we're doing the work that we need to in order to actually build something that will, we think, last in the long run. And that does mean that we have to make some changes like this to actually make things, work and make sense.
Okay. What happened to softwood and hardwood? Okay, so I actually addressed this on one of I do AMAs often on my Instagram stories, and we talked about that there. And so trees are just completely changing, right? So there's going to be different tiers of trees, as we've shown a few times here. So like you no longer get softwood and hardwood. You get like for tier 1 trees, you get, is it fir, I think. And then tier 2, you get cedar, and you need those specific types of wood to craft higher tier or lower tier, whatever it may be, items in the different crafting stations. So it's just like completely different, completely revamped.
Yeah, and there will be a conversion of basically items that you have now into these new items, essentially. Again, it's like we just want to make things make sense. So there's like some weird things that we have to do when it comes to conversion to like build out this space for the long run. But if you guys see chapter 2, it just looks a lot more like a game should. Like a lot of the things that just like were really weird and off when new players came in. If you're like familiar with playing any RPG or like any farm game, where early team maybe we hadn't built a farm game before, right? Like this is something that we had just done for the first time. We came in with a ton of enthusiasm for Web3. We figured out some of the Web3 growth. Now we got to figure out and like actually build a game that works too. So yeah, there's some stuff there. So again, same thing with skill level. We're consolidating some of the skill levels. All the experience you put in will be respected, and we'll make sure with these players too. Why not just release it and fix the bugs along the way? We're going to do that too. So again, at Pixels, we actually do release things much earlier than basically any other game studio. That's always been our approach. It's always been how we view things too. Like I come from a startup background. I don't come from a game background. That's been like actually a huge advantage when it comes to building Pixels, because game people are perfectionists a lot of the times. That's why even in Web3 gaming, you're seeing games not released as early as I think they should, especially because Web3 gaming is in such an early and like untested space. I really think people just hold that stuff back too late. Now we're in this weird position where we have like hundreds of thousands of real DAU. Like we have to have like a certain level of quality before we release. Otherwise, it's not a good look for us too. But we're still going to release it, a bit earlier than basically any other game studio would. And our promise to you guys is when we release this, it might not be perfect, but we're going to be there doing live ops and doing all the adjustments that we need to right away too. The only concern I have right now when it comes to chapter 2 and the game loops is like, I think it's in a good spot now, finally. Basically, like I was putting a ton of personal attention into this over the last like 3 to 4 weeks. When I saw like, about 4 weeks ago, it's like, oh, this is not where it needs to be when it comes to development. Like that's where my full-time focus has basically been, and like, doing some of the other growth stuff as well too. But yeah, now essentially we're just going to get some real players in. We're going to make sure that it makes sense to them too, because we don't want us to be like such a closed loop where it's just team making decisions and we do some weird stuff that you guys are like, why would you ever think about doing it this way? So yeah, we'll basically do like a week or two of play testing with these people. I want to give adequate time for basically our team to make adjustments if they think that we need to. And then, yeah, we'll open it up.
Yeah. Okay. So this AMA, obviously we've focused like holistically on NFT land gameplay. So we've got all of these higher tiers. We've got, there's going to be different lands with different focuses and whatnot. I just saw someone, I lost it, but they were like, what about like chickens and mills? I think they're talking more about like the traits, I guess, that are kind of like the only thing that we have right now that make land special. So it's kind of like we're adding all of these other things to NFT land gameplay that makes them like even more special. That makes sense. And then for like mills and chickens, like I said earlier, those aren't changing on the initial release of chapter 2, and they probably won't change for a long time if they ever do. I'm just not saying they will never change because I don't really know the future. Maybe we want to implement some sort of tiering system so that like NFT lands like have like an insane advantage on like certain things like the mills or the chickens versus like somewhere else. I don't know what the design is there, but I will say initially nothing's going to change on that front. And yeah, we already talked about the trees, and yeah, the size will obviously give you benefit. If the bigger you have, the more space you'll have to like add more industries. And then we already talked about the houses. You have the 2 top floors, and yeah, the big house will have like the solarium in there, which will have the flowers, we haven't fully designed out the utility there yet, so I can't like fully share it with you yet. But yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. 2025, like it's actually just a couple weeks away now, and I can like legitimately say that this time. I am personally much more involved in where chapter 2 is. It's funny because like I only have so much capacity in certain areas sometimes, but yeah, I mean, as like the leader of this, like it's at the end of the day like my responsibility to make sure that this moves, and it's in a better spot now. We've upped some processes. The team's gotten like a bit more disciplined on making sure that we know when releases will release, and that's kind of stuff that we're focused on too. So when it comes to like actually following up on the release dates that we say, I've been emphasizing to the team how important that is, and we're like changing some processes. We're getting some more help there as well too. So appreciate the patience with this. You have no idea. It like sucks when we have to like push something back, and yeah, that's not what we want. Like we know the position that we're in. Like we have a live token out, like all this kind of stuff. It's important that what we say that we do, we follow up on. What I can say is we're building the base for something that we hope is going to be much bigger. And yeah, appreciate the patience with this as we just get through all the scaling issues.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, we've gone way over. Is there any other questions? Yeah, some people have asked about UGC throughout. So yeah, the builder or the UGC builder, obviously you guys have seen some updates to it. We've lowered the cost of minting UGC. Approvals are still paused for now, just as Luke had said, due to team capacity. But we'll get that going, and probably after chapter 2 release, and then we'll start going through all your submissions.
All right, great. Well, yeah, thanks so much, guys. There's still a lot of work that we need to do, obviously, when it comes to like everything going on in Pixels. Yeah, we're upgrading the team. We're building out more capacity here to actually address all of these issues. Again, like Pixel Task Board, all this kind of stuff. That's where we've had like a little less capacity as we're still building out some of the live ops team. That is, I think, probably like the most important tech that we're building out, right? Like we need to have Pixel Task Board dialed in as well too. Part of why we haven't been like diving too much into that too is because we have all these changes with chapter 2 coming out that are going to completely change the task board, the tasks, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot here that we're working on. We'll keep answering more questions. Tag us on Twitter. We'll answer some stuff if you have any like thoughts, concerns, or like anything else that you want to talk about. I've been more active on Twitter. I kind of like that as a forum for some of the discussion lately because it's so public. You know, we build in public, and like, you know, other people in the space can see the work that we're doing there too. So yeah, keep asking questions. Love it, guys. Appreciate it. And yeah, we're gonna get this out soon. I promise.
Amazing. All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.